Have you ever looked at the person lying next to you? The one you've shared decades, children, struggles, and Sunday mornings with, and quietly wondered, when did we stop touching each other? Not just in the physical sense, but in the way you once looked across a room and smiled for no reason. The way she used to rest her head on your shoulder without being asked. The way you'd reach for her hand and she'd already be reaching for yours. What happened to that? Time has a way of doing something strange. It doesn't steal love outright. It just buries it under routines, chores, distractions, and polite habits. You're still together, you still talk, you still love, but something warm, something wordless feels like it's gone quiet. You begin to notice the space between you. Not distance, but absence. She still kisses your cheek. She still asks if you've taken your pills. She still folds your favorite shirt just the way you like it. But her eyes, they don't linger anymore. Her laughter, it doesn't carry the same lightness. And her body, it feels hesitant, almost like it's forgotten how to say yes with ease. And you might wonder, is it me? My age? Her hormones? Just what happens after 60? But what if none of that is the real reason? What if intimacy doesn't fade because bodies change, but because something else, something quieter, stops flowing between you? In today's story, we'll explore a truth most couples never talk about. Not a fix, not a trick, but a way back into the emotional space that keeps physical connection alive. You'll hear the wisdom of a 92-year-old woman who rediscovered intimacy late in life, not with a new partner, but with the same man, through a single shift in presence. And by the end of this video, you won't just understand why touch disappears, you'll see how to bring it back, without pressure, without performance, just by choosing to see each other again. Most people assume that when physical closeness fades in a relationship, it's just part of getting older, that bodies slow down, that desire dries up, that it's simply the price of time. It sounds logical. After all, age brings changes, hormonal shifts, physical limitations, lower energy, even discomfort. And it's easy to point to those changes and say, well, of course things aren't like they used to be. But if that were the full story, it wouldn't explain this. Some couples in their 70s still touch like lovers, still flirt, still make each other laugh so hard they cry, still have moments in the kitchen where one playful glance turns into a kiss that makes them feel 30 again. How do you explain that? These couples face the same aging process, the same health issues, the same family stresses and daily demands. They're not superhuman. They haven't escaped biology, but they've protected something else. Something most couples lose, not because of age, but because of neglect. That something is emotional visibility. You see, the real threat to intimacy isn't age. It's invisibility. It's when your partner no longer feels emotionally seen, when her efforts, her presence, her thoughts, her unspoken needs go unnoticed. Not because you don't care, but because life has slowly dulled your attention. And without emotional visibility, physical closeness begins to wither. Not out of choice, but out of quiet survival. For women especially, this truth is even more powerful. Desire for her doesn't begin in the body, it begins in the heart, and more precisely, in how her heart feels when it is near yours. Does she feel safe? Does she feel cherished? Does she feel like she matters to you, not just as a wife, a homemaker, or mother, but as a woman? If the answer is no, or even, I'm not sure, then no amount of touch, romance, or effort in the bedroom will bring her body closer because her heart has already pulled away. And once that happens, physical closeness becomes something else entirely. It can feel like pressure, like performance, like a demand. Even if you mean it as affection, it may be received as expectation. And that's when her body quietly begins to say, not tonight, not because of disinterest, but because emotional safety is missing. This doesn't happen overnight. It's not about one bad conversation or one fight. It happens slowly, gradually, almost invisibly. It happens when you stop asking how she's really feeling, when you interrupt her without realizing it, when you assume she's fine because she doesn't complain, when you forget the small moments that once made her feel special, like noticing her favorite tea is running low, or holding her hand during a tough moment, or looking into her eyes when she speaks. Over time, she still shows up, still makes meals, still asks how your doctor's appointment went. But emotionally, something inside begins to retreat, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. And the man who once knew how to read every mood in her eyes now finds himself lost. He wonders why she never reaches out anymore, why her touch has gone cold, why even when they sit close, it feels like there's a wall between them. He blames age or menopause or the fact that we're just tired. But the truth is harder and simpler. She doesn't feel emotionally safe anymore. And safety is not just a feeling, it's a biological necessity. When a woman's emotional system detects disconnection, her nervous system withdraws, her heart closes, her body resists touch. Not because it doesn't crave closeness, but because it doesn't trust it anymore. Here's the paradox. You may not have done anything wrong. You might still be kind, loyal, even affectionate. But if presence is replaced with routine, if attention is replaced with assumption, if curiosity is replaced with conclusion, well, she'll begin to feel emotionally invisible. And when a woman feels invisible, her desire does not die, it hides. It curls up in the corner of her heart and waits to feel safe again, waits for a moment when a hand touches her without urgency, a glance lands on her with real curiosity, or a sentence begins with, "I miss how we used to laugh." Because women don't open physically unless they feel held emotionally. And yet, here's the beautiful truth. Emotional visibility is not something you had and lost forever. It's something that can be restored, gently, consistently, and sincerely. Not with pressure, not with performance. But with presence. With a hand that reaches not for results, but for connection. With a voice that asks not, "What's wrong with you?" but "What have I stopped seeing?" With a heart that is willing to slow down and say, "I see you, not for what you do, but for who you are." This is not about blame. This is about remembrance. Because underneath the years and the routines, she's still there. And if she's like most women, she doesn't need you to be younger, richer, or stronger. She just needs to be seen again. You're sitting on the couch beside her. The television hums softly. She's crocheting or scrolling her phone. Maybe you're watching the news, maybe not really watching anything at all. You glance at her. She hasn't looked your way in a while. You wonder if she even noticed you sat down. You reach out gently, place your hand over hers. She doesn't pull away, but she doesn't grip it either, just leaves it there, polite, still, neutral. And something inside you whispers, we used to be more than this. You think back to when her touch felt electric, when she'd leaned into your chest during storms, when just seeing her in the morning light made your chest swell with something you didn't need words for. You didn't even have to try back then. It just happened. But now it feels like you're trying too hard just to feel a little bit close. You tell yourself maybe it's normal. Maybe all couples slow down like this. Maybe it's hormones or age or just the way life goes after 30 or 40 years. Still, something doesn't sit right. Because even though she's there, she feels far. And the truth is, you're not imagining it. You're not the only one who's noticed this quiet drift. I've spoken with dozens of men, retired engineers, veterans, pastors, teachers, who sit in my office and say the same thing in different words. Jinling, she used to laugh at my jokes. She used to hold my hand in public. She used to reach for me at night. Now she barely turns toward me. They all say it softly, with a kind of grief they're almost embarrassed to admit. Because these are not men who stopped caring. These are not men who cheated or betrayed trust. They've worked hard, stayed faithful, provided. But somehow, over time, their wife's body became a little less warm. Her eyes a little more tired, her words more about schedules than stories, more about reminders than curiosity. And if you felt that change too, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not broken, and you are not alone. There's nothing wrong with you for missing the closeness, for aching when your hand hovers over her back at night, but doesn't land because you're not sure how she'll react. In fact, that ache means your heart is still alive, still open, still wanting to connect. And that matters. What makes this harder is that so many older men were never taught how to talk about this kind of loss. They don't know how to say, I feel lonely beside the person I love most. But I promise you, thousands of men feel this exact way. They've watched the woman they adore slip into silence, not out of malice, but out of slow, quiet disconnection, a kind of emotional thinning that happens when neither person realizes just how invisible they've become to one another. One man in his late 60s described it like this: "It's not that we fight, it's not that she's cold, it's just that it's like the music stopped and we didn't notice until the room got quiet." Another said, "She makes me breakfast, she folds my laundry, she checks on my pills, but she hasn't looked at me in months. Not really. It's subtle, but it's heavy." And many men don't bring it up because they don't want to upset her, because they think maybe it's their fault, or worse, that it's just too late. But let me reassure you, that feeling you have, the one that says we used to be more than this, it's not delusion. It's memory. It's truth. And more than anything, it's a sign that you still care, that you still believe closeness is possible, that the ember hasn't gone out. It's just waiting for a little breath, a little warmth, a little noticing. You're not the only one standing at that emotional doorway, unsure of how to knock. And you don't have to stay there alone, because the path back begins not with effort, but with recognition. And the first step is knowing you're not the only one who misses us. A woman doesn't stop desiring closeness because she no longer loves her partner. She stops desiring it when her heart no longer feels emotionally safe. This truth isn't dramatic. It's not something you read in magazines or see in romantic comedies. It's quiet, subtle, but deeply powerful. You see, most men are taught that desire is about timing, hormones, or physical attraction. That if you keep yourself healthy, treat her well, maybe buy her flowers or take her to dinner, intimacy will naturally follow. But for most women, especially as they age, none of that creates real desire. Real desire comes from feeling emotionally safe. And emotional safety isn't a luxury. It's not something nice to have. It's a biological requirement. It's the hidden key to whether her body opens or closes, whether she moves toward you or pulls away, even when she doesn't mean to. There's a beautiful invisible system inside every woman, an emotional nervous system that constantly scans for signs of connection, of warmth, of consistency. When she feels seen and valued, not just in big moments, but in the small daily ways, her body stays soft, open, curious. But when that emotional signal weakens, even slightly, her body begins to shift. It might start with small things, a shorter kiss, less lingering in bed, a look that avoids eye contact. Over time, these become habits, and soon the body that once leaned in starts leaning away. And here's what no one tells you. Most of the time, she doesn't even realize it's happening. She still loves you, she still cares, but the emotional space between you has gone quiet. And with that silence comes distance. Not because she's withholding, but because her heart no longer feels invited. A 2021 study from the University of Rochester revealed something stunning. In couples over 60, regular emotional check-ins were directly linked to increased physical intimacy. In fact, those who practiced consistent emotional presence, simple, honest, non-defensive curiosity about how their partner was feeling, saw a 28% increase in sexual satisfaction in less than 6 months. That's not a coincidence. That's biology. Another study published in the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy found that emotional attunement, the ability to notice and respond to each other's feelings, was a stronger predictor of sexual satisfaction in older women than hormone levels, physical fitness, or sexual technique combined. So why does this matter so much? Because it means you don't have to perform. You don't have to chase youth. You don't need to say all the right thing. You just need to show her you still see her, you still feel her, you still care to understand. There's a reason why one sentence from a 92-year-old woman has stayed with me longer than any study or statistic. She said, "A woman gives her heart and her body fully when she feels cherished, protected, and emotionally secure. Not when she feels desired, not when she feels impressed, when she feels safe." And that word safe doesn't mean boring, it doesn't mean predictable. It means she can open without fear, express without judgment, be touched without wondering what it's leading to. It means she can relax. And in that relaxation, desire returns, not because it's asked for, but because it's felt. Think of her body like a garden. You don't force a flower to bloom. You watered it. You remove the weeds. You give it light and patience. And then it opens. So many men try to revive intimacy with effort, with strategy, with trying harder. But the secret isn't in doing more. It's in being closer. When was the last time you looked at her and simply asked, "Is there something I've stopped seeing?" When was the last time you noticed the sound of her voice when she's tired, or the way her shoulders curl when she's holding something in? These are not tricks, they are windows. And every time you walk through one, her heart remembers, it's safe here. I can be soft again. The body will follow the heart, and the heart will follow safety. Every time. This is the Eper truth. Not that desire fades with age, but that presence fades with distraction. And when presence is restored, intimacy returns. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once, but always honestly. And that is what brings couples back. Not spark, not youth, not even sex, but emotional safety that whispers, I still see you, I still choose you, I'm still here. Daniel night after 36 years of marriage. A man named Daniel sat beside his wife on their porch as the sun dipped behind the hills. The air was warm. The silence between them had grown familiar. They weren't angry. They hadn't argued. They had simply stopped reaching. She looked out into the distance, rocking gently. He looked down at his hands, weathered and quiet. And then, without planning it, he said, I miss us. She turned, slowly, not with shock, but with softness. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. Instead, she reached for his hand, not with passion, not with answers, just presence. That night, nothing dramatic happened, but something real did. They stayed up a little later, spoke a little slower, and in the days that followed, the way they moved around each other shifted, just slightly. She stood closer in the kitchen. He touched her back without thinking. She laughed more easily. He listened more carefully. That sentence, I miss us, opened a door that had been shut, not locked. A door neither of them had noticed until it creaked open again. And here's the invitation for you. Maybe your I miss us is long overdue. Maybe it doesn't need to be said in those exact words. Maybe it's just a moment of honesty, a hand that lingers longer than usual, a question asked not out of habit, but out of care. The truth is, change in a long-term relationship doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from recognition. The recognition that the way things are right now might be functional, but not fulfilling. And if you're here reading this far, there's a good chance part of you already knows that. So let me ask you something gently, but directly. When was the last time you looked at your partner, not to ask about the dishes or the schedule or the grandchildren, but to ask, how are you really? When was the last time you let her talk without trying to fix it? When was the last time you saw sadness in her eyes and said, you don't have to be okay, I'm just here? When was the last time you touched her without needing it to lead somewhere? If the answer is I don't remember, you're not alone. And you're not too late, because emotional disconnection doesn't happen in a day. It happens in the absence of small gestures. And those same gestures, when chosen with care, are what begin to bring it all back. So here's your quiet challenge. Not to change everything overnight, not to become someone new, but to notice, to pause, to say something like, I've been thinking about how close we used to be, and I want to feel that again, not just physically, emotionally. Let it be awkward if it needs to be. Let it be quiet. Let her take time to trust it, because she probably misses it too. But she might be waiting for you to see her, for you to choose her again, not with grand promises, but with presence, just like Daniel did on the porch. No fireworks, just a sentence. And the beginning of something new. So now you understand why she turned away. Not because she stopped loving you, not because time made her cold, but because her heart, quietly, patiently, was waiting to feel safe again. And maybe, deep down, yours was too. Here's the good news. You don't need grand gestures to bring intimacy back. You don't need to be more romantic, more exciting, or more like you were 20 years ago. You simply need to rebuild the space where emotional closeness can breathe again. And the way to do that begins with presence. Let's start small. One of the most powerful habits you can build is what we call intentional noticing. It sounds simple, but its impact is profound. This is the practice of looking at her not through routine, but through recognition. Each day, find one small thing to acknowledge, not about what she does, but about who she is. Tell her, the way you handled that call with our daughter, I saw your patience. It calmed even me. Or whisper, I love how your eyes still soften when you smile. I noticed that. Not flattery, not performance, just real specific presence. It tells her, you still see me, and that means I still exist here as a woman, not just a partner. Another shift that creates deep emotional safety is non-goal-oriented touch. You know how sometimes a hug starts to feel like a question, like it's asking for more? That kind of touch, over time, can make her feel like she's being used to get somewhere instead of met where she is. So reverse the energy. Reach for her just to hold her. Walk by her chair and brush her shoulder. Put your hand on her back during dinner. Kiss her forehead when she's folding towels. Let your touch say, I want to feel close to you, without needing more from you. That message is rare, and it's powerful, because when a woman knows she's not being touched for a result, she relaxes. And from that relaxation, her own desire returns naturally. The third daily habit is what we call emotional check-ins. Not long conversations, not therapy talks, just moments that open the door a little. Ask her, how's your heart today? Or simply say, you've been quiet lately. Is something weighing on you? I'd love to hear. And then, this part matters most. Listen, without fixing, without reacting, without turning it into your own story. If she shrugs it off, let it be. But over time, when she sees that your question is not a performance, but a pattern, she'll start to trust it. These emotional check-ins are what research now calls micro-repair points. According to a 2022 study from the Gottman Institute, couples who initiate emotion-first conversations at least twice a week are 64% more likely to report improved physical intimacy within 60 days. Because emotional safety isn't built in one conversation. It's built in repeated moments of consistent care. Let's make it even more practical. Try setting a quiet 10-minute window each day just for presence. Maybe while you drink tea together, or just before bed. No phones, no agenda, no noise. Just you sitting beside her, touching her hand, or sitting in silence, letting her feel that even now, even after all these years, you still want to know her. And if you're wondering whether this effort is worth it, ask yourself this. What would it feel like to walk into a room and have her eyes light up again? What would it feel like to touch her and feel her move towards you, not out of obligation, but because her heart is open again? What would it feel like to lie beside her at night with your fingers barely touching and know that warmth is real? That's what these small habits unlock. Not fireworks, but slow, steady light. The kind that doesn't burn out when stress comes. The kind that doesn't need fixing, just tending. And here's one more tip, especially if it's been a long time since you've touched at all. Start with ritualized connection. Set a 3-day practice, simple, no-pressure gestures. Each day, do 3 things. Say 1 intentional sentence of appreciation. Offer 1 non-sexual touch. Ask 1 emotionally honest question. Try it for 3 days. Then pause. Observe. Has her body leaned a little closer? Has her gaze lingered longer? Is something in you softened too? Oh, if it has, beautiful. If not, don't stop. Because rebuilding trust isn't a sprint. It's the quiet work of showing up every day with softness, with attention, with care. Let her relearn what it feels like to be chosen, not just as your wife, but as your emotional equal. And when she does, her heart will open and her body will follow, not because you asked, but because you created the space where she wanted to say yes again. Remember how we began this journey? With a quiet moment on the couch, with a glance that went unnoticed, with a hand that reached out and didn't feel her reach back. You weren't asking for passion, you weren't demanding anything. You just missed the feeling of being close. And now, maybe for the first time in a long time, you understand what was really missing. It wasn't desire, it wasn't love, it was emotional safety. The kind that makes her soften, the kind that makes her body lean in, the kind that says, I still feel safe here. And here's the part I hope you hold on to, because it matters deeply. You didn't lose that safety forever. You just stopped tending to it. And just like a garden that's been left untouched too long, the soil may feel dry, but it's not dead. It just needs water, gentle hands, a little patience. Because under all the silence, under the distance and the years and the routine, she's still there. And so are you. Maybe you don't recognize each other the way you used to. Maybe the habits of the last decade have taken more space than you realized. But the ability to reconnect was never taken from you, it just got buried. And now you've started to unearth it again with new words, with smaller gestures, with quiet presence, with the courage to say, I miss us, and the humility to ask, how can I help you feel safe again? This is what real love looks like in the later years. It's not about recapturing youth. It's not about proving anything. It's not about doing more. It's about seeing more, about noticing the shift in her breath when she talks about something hard, about remembering that her body listens to your tone long before your touch, about holding her, not because you want something, but because you miss the warmth of her closeness. And maybe most of all, it's about showing up today, not as who you used to be, but as who you're willing to become now. The 92-year-old woman who shared her story with us, she didn't rekindle intimacy through some secret trick. She simply said one line that we've returned to again and again. A woman gives her heart and her body fully when she feels cherished, protected, and emotionally secure. That is the foundation. That is the path. And that is the invitation you hold in your hands today. So, as you leave this story and return to your own home, your own relationship, your own quiet moments, I'll leave you with just one question. A soft one, a real one. What's one small thing you can do today to help her feel emotionally safe again? Because the answer to that question is not only the key to closeness, it's the key to coming home, to each other, to yourselves, to love as it was always meant to feel. Not dramatic, not perfect, but steady, and still very much alive.